What's up guys, welcome back to another crazy gaming video where today, instead of playing video games, we're going to be talking about the Charlie Kirk assassination. So it's freezing cold outside, so I'm going to try to get this done as fast as possible because this is awful.
Counting or not counting gang violence? Great.
We are Charlie Kirk, we carry the flame, we'll fight for the gospel, we'll honor his name. We are Charlie Kirk, his courage.
On September 10th last year, for about 5 minutes, the internet collectively decided it was living inside the worst possible group chat. Charlie Kirk was trending, timelines were melting, AI bots were hallucinating, and everyone suddenly became a breaking news journalist with zero sources. If you were online that day, you probably heard 5 completely different versions of the same event, and somehow all of them were wrong. Before we can even get into what happened online, I'm going to give a very brief introduction on who Charlie Kirk is and why his name is now a trigger word. Charlie didn't just spawn out of nowhere. Me and him are on a first name basis. Should I make fun of dead people? I shouldn't say that. Kirk didn't just spawn out of nowhere with a blue checkmark. He grew up with wealthy, moderate, conservative parents, going to a Presbyterian church throughout his childhood. He boycotted his school over cookie prices, volunteered for Mark Kirk's Senate campaign, and fueled conservative talk radio. He dropped out of college, took online classes at King's College, and co-founded Turning Point USA. By that time, he was just scraping at fame. He already had a huge audience and a huge group of people who hated him. Then he was shot, and when something shocking happens to a polarizing figure, the internet does not react normally. The moment news of the assassination broke, information didn't spread, it splintered. AI chatbots like Grok immediately started giving confident, completely incorrect answers. Some bots misidentified suspects, invented motives, and several times claimed Kirk was still alive even after he very much wasn't. Even legit news outlets messed up. Some ran images that were AI enhanced, which sounds fancy until you realize that's just a nice way of saying fake, but sharper. Those images later got pulled, but by then they were already everywhere. The problem being, when something hits the algorithm, it doesn't matter if it's correct. What matters is that it performed as well as possible for as long as possible. On top of these AI-enhanced images, people used AI to animate still images of the suspect, which resulted in heavy distortion of the original image. When an event is scary and confusing, people hate not having answers, so they fill in the blanks themselves. This is where social media does its thing. Platforms don't reward accuracy, they reward engagement. The fastest and loudest, most emotional takes get pushed first because those are the ones people react to, engage with, and hold your attention just long enough to push another ad.
I just want to point out the lot. I've been working on it there. It's 5. Okay, now 5 is a
Joe, you got nothing on my curse tool.
That's why conspiracy theories showed up almost immediately. Some people claimed Kirk was faking his death, others blamed Israel. None of this was based on evidence, it was based on vibes, screenshots, and the human brain desperately trying to find a meaning in chaos. Psychologists explain this as pattern seeking. Humans would rather believe a wild story than accept randomness. Someone made a post on Reddit reading, and I have it here. The assassination was a false flag operation to distract from the Epstein files. Charlie is alive and well, living under a pseudonym in Qatar. Those were blank cartridges shot from that campus roof. The federal government has a scouting program for effects artists that outhires all the top Hollywood studios. Think I'm making this up? Oh what, you're telling me you actually trust the government to tell you who is dead? Coroners are a part of the deep state. I love that, I love Reddit. The problem is, while this is a very obviously satire post to any normal person, people are stupid. Charlie Kirk's wife and kids are obviously crisis actors. Thought I saw Epstein driving a car a week after his death. I think they used a squib possibly, or AI or hologram. No blood trail following to the SUV. He's fine, folks. Was the Charlie Kirk that got shot just a holographic image? Makes you think, doesn't it? What made everything worse was how fast the reaction split people into teams. Almost immediately, the conversation stopped being about what actually happened and turned it into an us versus them situation. If you already disliked Charlie Kirk, your feed was filled with posts downplaying the event, treating it as a joke, or even praising it. If you supported him, your For You page was probably flooded with posts framing it as an attack on an entire movement. There was little to no middle ground. Social media algorithms fed each group content that reinforced their existing beliefs, pushing people deeper into their own bubbles while making the other side seem more extreme and inhuman. That kind of polarization doesn't just distort the facts, it makes people emotionally invested in defending a narrative, even when the evidence starts contradicting it. The algorithm is like, oh, you're emotional? Cool, here's more of that. Once sides were taken and conspiracy theories started circulating, they didn't just exist, they multiplied. People saw posts that aligned with what they already believed, shared them, and then got fed even more extreme versions of that same idea. That's how echo chambers form. You're not seeing more information, you're seeing the same bad information repeated with new, real or fake details until it feels real. Meanwhile, calmer, more accurate updates didn't travel as far. They weren't exciting, they just didn't make people angry, and on the internet, boring equals invisible. Another big reason the situation spiraled so fast was how some influencers reacted. Instead of slowing things down, they leaned into the emotional reactionary commentary that fed the chaos. Nick Fuentes, for example, treated the situation like proof of a broader conspiracy against his ideology, framing it in a way that made his audience feel attacked and threatened, which only amped people up more. Candace Owens, meanwhile, focused heavily on outrage and suspicion, questioning narratives before solid facts were even available, and encouraging her audience to distrust mainstream reporting. Neither of them outright pulled the brakes on misinformation. Instead, their massive platforms helped to legitimize speculation and fear at a moment when accuracy mattered most. When creators like that jump in early, their audiences don't wait for confirmation. They pick a side and run with it. Eventually, real people with real authority had to step in and be like, hey, maybe stop believing everything your phone tells you. Utah's governor acknowledged that there was a massive amount of disinformation being tracked across social media and AI platforms, which is kind of wild because when government officials are telling you to log off, you know things have gotten bad. But by that point, the damage was already done. The narrative had already spun out of control. Here's the interesting part though. A few months later, almost no one was still talking about it. By November, most of the outrage faded. Creators moved on, and once accurate information settled in, the overwhelming response was pretty clear. Most people condemned the violence, the extreme takes lost traction, the internet quietly packed up and went on to the next controversy, which shows how inflated the initial reaction was. What this whole situation proves is that the first version of a story you see online is usually the worst one, not because people are evil or because social media is out to get you, but because platforms reward speed over truth and emotion over context. We see this over and over again. Stories and events that happened years ago, before social media, are still being theorized on and distorted by people who would rather believe the stories they make up in their head rather than the facts that are out in front of them.
Pretty convincing, isn't it? I know I find it convincing more often than I don't, but then I am particularly vulnerable to these kinds of stories. You know, there is a question that I ask myself about once every 18 months, once every 2 years or so. And this is a question that smart people ask themselves every day, multiple times a day. I would go so far as to say it is the question that keeps a smart person smart. 4 words. What if I'm wrong?